Swamp Things, a podcast reliving Alan Moore's legendary run.
I had to come, Arcane. I had to be sure. Oh, I know I saw your ship, falling and burning. I know I saw it, drop like a wounded sun, exploding beyond the mountains. I know that you couldn't have survived. But I didn't hear the rattle in your windpipe. I didn't see the glaze crawl over your eyes. I didn't see the body, Arcane. And I've learned that if you don't see the body, then the rotten stuff just keeps coming back. It's funny, the good can die, alone, and unnoticed, and they stay dead. Harry K., the man who saved my life, he was on your ship when it fell. He's dead now. Dead forever. I know that. I didn't come looking for him. I came looking for you. I had to come, Arcane. I had to be sure. So, it's true. You're dead. Really dead. I don't think I realized before how important you were to my life, Arcane. I don't think I really understood before this moment. You were my opposite. I had my humanity taken away from me. I've been trying to claw it back. You started out human and threw it all away. You did it deliberately. We defined each other, didn't we? By understanding you, I came that much closer to understanding myself. And now, you're dead. Really dead. And what am I going to do now?
Hello and welcome to the inaugural episode of Swamp Things, a podcast where we'll be retracing Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run from beginning to end. But first, let me introduce myself and my co-host. This muck-encrusted mockery of a man goes by the name of Robert Reinecke. The shambling heaps that my co-host and provided our introductory reading is John Bierly. Hello, John.
Hi, Robert. Hello, listeners. We are super excited to do this. We've been talking about it for a long time, and it's exciting to finally be recording our first episode.
Yeah, to give our listeners a basic idea as to the conceit of the show, I read these issues as they came out, one exception, and have reread them a few times over the years. To keep me honest and free of nostalgia, I've recruited John, who's never read these issues before. Is that
yes,
right,
I read them in 1980 never.
So I think it's going to be an interesting experiment, and I think it's going to be, for our listeners, I think there are probably more people that are in your camp than mine, but we'll see how this works out.
It's exciting for me. You know, Robert and I have known each other for years, and we've been on podcasts and things together before. He's invited me to be on other shows of his, and anytime Robert Reinecke, this is exciting not just for me but for the listeners as well. When Robert invites you on a journey through a comic book, the answer is always yes. And Robert won't toot his own horn, so I'm going to say a couple of quick things here about Robert. Robert knows it all about comics without being a know-it-all. He's the guy who knows every issue, knows the characters, can put it in beautiful context, not in a way to show that he's smarter than anybody in the room, but in a way that says, I know how these characters and stories affected me, and I want you to enjoy them the same way. I want to introduce these things to you. I want you to enjoy it in the same way that I was able to. And I've always admired that about Robert. He has introduced me to so many films and comics over the years. So this is an exciting journey for me, and I know it's going to be an exciting journey for you out there too. So thank you, Robert.
You're much too kind, John, but
it's the truth.
I will say I genuinely love Alan Moore's run. I believe it is one of the comic books that have kept me reading comic books these many decades after it came out. I think it could be an exciting experience. So hopefully I can communicate it in a way that'll entertain and enlighten our listeners.
No doubt.
So we'll be starting with Alan Moore's first issue, Saga the Swamp Thing number 20, entitled Loose Ends. Given that we're on issue number 20 of the second series of Swamp Thing, I think a little background is in order just to understand the storylines that are going on and keep everybody on the same page. In 1971, Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson crafted a tale featuring a 19th century Swamp Thing for House of Secrets number 92. That reportedly made it the best-selling issue of the month for DC. If interested, it's been reprinted many times, and you can find it on the DC Universe app. Because it was so popular, the two were lobbied to continue Swamp Thing stories. They came up with a way of updating the origin to contemporary times, which launched in Swamp Thing's own magazine in 1972. The Swamp Thing series told the story of scientist Alec Holland, who was blown up in his lab by corporate criminals after the secrets of his biorestorative formula, which transformed him into the half-man, half-plant Swamp Thing. During their 10 issues together, Wein and Wrightson had Swamp Thing mourn over his dead wife, Linda, be pursued by government agent Matt Cable, who would be the Lieutenant Gerard to Swamp Thing's Richard Kimball, encounter a variety of horror villains, highlighted by a Frankenstein-Dracula combo named Anton Arcane, who would come back more monstrous in each incarnation, and he would befriend Arcane's niece, Abigail Arcane. Wrightson, who was a budding superstar, left after 10 issues, and Wein left shortly thereafter, and the series kind of limped to cancellation from there. But the series was well regarded, and the movie rights were purchased by Michael Uslan, which led to the 1982 movie version directed by Wes Craven. At that time, Len Wein was now an editor at DC and convinced the higher-ups to relaunch the series to tie into the movie. Originally, the series was written by Marty Pasco and drawn by Thomas Yates. Yates was a graduate of the first class of the Joe Kubert School. Yates was assisted, sometimes uncredited, sometimes credited, by fellow Kubert School attendees Stephen R. Bissett and John Totleben. Yates left after a little over a year and was replaced by Bissett and Totleben, who would carry over into Alan Moore's run. Pasco's run was a complicated storyline with many threads. Overall, the main villain was the Sunderland Corporation, which was pursuing the Swamp Thing in an effort to dissect him and discover the secrets of the biorestorative formula. With Pasco's burgeoning Hollywood career in television animation, he became bogged down and started falling behind schedule. With issue number 19, Pasco had one final confrontation between Swamp Thing and Anton Arcane, who was more insect-like than ever, and Wein decided that they needed to get the series back on schedule or canceled it. At this point, Wein recruited a British writer with talent and a knack for meeting weekly comics deadlines in Alan Moore. Plans were quickly made to reinvent Swamp Thing, but first they had to get the issue out. Reportedly, Wein was going on a vacation and said before he left that the issue would either be complete when he got back or the book would be canceled. Details on getting the issue out are available at Stephen Bissett's website, srbissett.com. And it's an interesting story, and apparently John Totleben made some heroic efforts to get it out. But Alan Moore had a number of issues to transition from Pascal's storylines to what he wanted to tell. He appropriately titled the issue Loose Ends and tried to clear up A, the aftermath of the battle with Arcane, B, Pascal Creations' Liz Tremaine, a boozy journalist who had written a trashy best-selling Swamp Thing book before getting dragged into his adventures, and Dennis Barclay, a doctor with a bit of a god complex who had formerly worked for the Sunderland Corporation, and C, reunited characters Abigail Arcane, who had married Matt Cable in between series, and Matt Cable, who had been experimented on by scientists, turned into an alcoholic due to the trauma, and developed powers unknown to him where he could create monsters and other things out of thin air. So is that all clear, John?
That's very clear. That's very clear. And again, the comparisons and context, always, that's where Robert always comes through.
Okay. So let's jump into the issue. Let me give you a few credits here on it. So, the cover, dated January 1984. The Saga of the Swamp Thing number 20. You can see Swamp Thing under attack by soldiers wielding rifles and flamethrowers with helicopters supporting them. And I think it's a pretty good cover. And I think
that's a pretty action-packed cover.
I think it accurately conveys the contents of the book, too. The cover is by Tom and Yates, and I think it is very moody, and it certainly echoes some of Wrightson's original work. The interiors. I'll just go over the credits. We can get on from there. The script is by Alan Moore. Pencils are by Dan Day. Inks are by John Totleben. Editor is Len Wein. Colorist is Tatiana Wood. And the letterer is John Costanza. So, they have a decorative splash page here, which is apparently not in Alan Moore's book. Basically, Swamp Thing being haunted by old ghosts of the past, kind of to set the mood. And
looks like Jack Palance over his left shoulder there.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit. Just a little.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a mood setter. Apparently, it was not in the original script, and apparently they had to basically condense pages as a result. I think it really leads to some caption-heavy pages, especially at the beginning here.
Right.
But I think it's effective, and I think it shows what artists can add. Dan Day is not necessarily going for storyboards here, but he is embroidering and using the page for some decorative effects, and I think that's it's fairly effective as a mood setter.
I like it as a mood setter, and I like the page in the sense that, Swamp Thing is sort of, it's like he's, smashing his way out of the panel with the ghosts of his past looming behind him. But, they're in black and white, everything else is in color, and it's sort of, I feel like in a way it's just saying, this is, we are aware of the ghosts of the past, but we are smashing forward to a new future. I think it's very effective in that way.
Yeah, I would agree. And then we get to the 2-page spread, basically, where the opening reading of the show is from, which is basically Swamp Thing picking through the wreckage looking for Arcane's body. I think it's fairly interesting that they address the if he's not dead, he's not dead if there's no body cliche.
Right. Which is also a little bit of foreshadowing about the ending.
Yes, it is. I mean, and you can also see that Swamp Thing is having something of an existential crisis here about what's his purpose, what's he going to do, what's his place in the world at this point. He kind of has a Hamlet moment with Arcane's body itself. So
it's fantastic.
I think it sets the mood pretty well for the themes of what this issue is going to be about. I guess it's just a matter of what the stakes are and what is the physical conflict going to be. Which brings us to another 2-page section with General Avery Sutherland plotting an attack on Swamp Thing and his allies. And I think this is also a fairly good piece of writing. It tells us everything we need to know about General Sunderland. I mean, he mentions using satellites and military weaponry and evoking national security so the locals won't question what he's doing. So I think it's a interesting contrast to many of Swamp Thing's villains. I mean, Arcane is a throwback, kind of a gothic villain, which you can tell from the 2-page spread before.
And you called him sort of a mix between Dracula and Frankenstein.
Right. And even, I guess you could see him kind of morph into some science fiction elements, too, with the insect-like... the insectoid
airship, yes.
Yeah. And some of the other creatures lying around in the background. But Sunderland is clearly a modern villain. I mean, I think he makes a good case that he says that they're all going to be in for a rude awakening, and I think that's a case to be made that it reflects the change in horror since Swamp Thing was created. I mean, Swamp Thing was created in 1971, and his series launched in 1972, but that was a whole other era of horror by then. Night of the Living Dead and Rosemary's Baby had preceded Swamp Thing's creation, but you could still have Hammer's series of Dracula and Frankenstein movies going on, and the Universal monster movies were in constant rotation on TV. So it was Swamp Thing was kind of a universal monster brought to life in his own way.
Very much so.
But post the creation of Swamp Thing, you had things like The Exorcist and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween, Don't Look Now, Friday the 13th, Alien. Stephen King was launched his career. You had 70s paranoia cinema take place. So there would have been a whole change. And even by 1984, when this came out, we were in the midst of the 80s slasher craze.
Right.
So with its gore and dead teenagers and that. So it was a total different series total different environment by now. So I think Moore is trying to address that here.
And I wonder too if the fact that this is in 1984, and the novel 1984 is about sort of the paranoia about Big Brother and the government, and here you've got these shadowy figures discussing secret missions and UFOs and strange monsters and creatures. It's sort of a precursor to the X-Files also in a way, and some of the things that kind of came back around in the 90s as well.
Yeah, and I mean they literally reference Close Encounters,
yes,
for their government cover up in here. So I mean it's very modern. It also, I think, introduces Newton's Cradle, which is the little pendulum toy with the various balls that illustrate the conservation of momentum and energy. It's very orderly, but it also shows that they're kind of proceeding like clockwork in their plans. And I
love the fact too. Yeah, it's pointed when it first enters the frame. It's kind of pointed at the audience, and then you get to the next page. As Robert said, as it clicks back and forth. You've got these guys that are loading up equipment on the trucks. They're loading weaponry on the helicopters. The military convoy is rolling out. I mean, this is some heavy duty stuff. And as Robert said, the perfect word there, momentum. You get that energy that there are so many forces at play beyond just the space-looking people and monsters that we saw on the first couple of pages. It's a great mood setter, and again for me who had never read these comics before, I immediately felt comfortable, and I felt that the mood was very familiar. Clearly, it's inspired a lot of the things that I love and enjoy, but it's doing it in a way that's just energetic and unique and weird, and I'm all in for this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a very modern device. I mean, there's a lot of people that would not come up with that idea to string various ideas together. It both works as a metaphor and a mood setter. I think it's one of the first signs of Alan Moore's really strengths as a comic book writer.
Right. And so, I mean, you look at, some of I remember the first time that I read Watchmen, I was overwhelmed by the prose sections. And I feel like I didn't maybe get as much out of them as I did in later readings. Watchmen's very overwhelming on the first read. Mm-hmm. It's not until the second or third reading that it all sort of starts to click and come together, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is more brilliant than I already thought it was. Whereas this, the poetic language is more of an immediate part of the story, and I think it even with the long caption sections, it still works because it sets that mood, it builds that world, the creepiness, the weirdness. I think it works really well.
I would agree. And I mean, it's moving forward. So we go from Sunderland's threatening their allies to a pair of Swamp Thing's allies in Liz Tremaine and Dennis. And I guess we start with Liz waking up after she and Dennis apparently hooked up overnight, which is a interesting bit of writing on Moore's part too. I mean, it has nothing to do with the main plot of the story, but I think it kind of hints that these characters have lives beyond the plot line of the story.
Right, and this was a little bit jarring for me, just in the sense that I can tell that clearly something's happened between these characters that is maybe unexpected for both of them. I feel what's going on, but not knowing who these characters were, this part was a little bit jarring for me, just because I didn't have a lot of context about their previous relationship, how they fit kind of into the overall story, how they relate to Alec Holland. So this was a little jarring for me.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean,
not in a bad way, because I'm interested about who they are and what's going on. Right.
Yeah, you're clearly getting thrown into the deep end here, and he's trying to do something interesting with them.
But I like that, though. I like being thrown in because again, I get the context. I was able to figure out roughly what was going on, even without knowing the characters.
Mm-hmm. And I kind of like that Alan Moore kind of gets to the point that Liz sees this as something like a one-time casual hookup, and Dennis is taking it a lot more seriously.
Right.
And I think you kind of see some of the nice guy, toxic masculinity and possessiveness take
very much so. Very much so. But he doesn't have much time to deal with those strange feelings, because here come the helicopters.
Yes. It's certainly a packed issue, but yeah, we get the helicopters coming in right away, and before we can even see what they're up to, Alan Moore cuts back to our main character, Swamp Thing, at the New Moon Motel, which I believe brings us to our second reading of Swamp Thing's thoughts as he ponders if there's any room for monsters in this world.
I made my way back here, to the moon. No sign of Dennis or Liz yet. It doesn't matter. I don't have anywhere else to go. Arcane. Maybe you were right. Maybe you were right just to die like that. It's a new world, Arcane. It's full of shopping malls and strip lights and software. The dark corners are being pushed back. A little more every day. We are things of the shadow, you and I. And there isn't as much shadow as there used to be. Perhaps there was once a world we could have belonged to. Maybe somewhere in Europe, back in the 15th century. The world was full of shadows then. Full of monsters. Not anymore. Things like us can't survive in the light, Arcane. Perhaps you realized that right at the end. Maybe you were right. Maybe we're better dead. Maybe the world has run out of room for monsters. Or maybe they're just getting harder to recognize.
So after that reading, I think it works very well as setting up more of the themes of this. Monsters and shadows and light, I think, are the ideas that Moore is introducing in his language. And I think he's talking about, is there any room for a monster like Swamp Thing in modern day world? And I like this language.
I love the language. I love that he even harkens back to, the 15th century when the world was full of shadows, full of monsters, not anymore. It reminds me a lot of the speech that Prince Nuada gives in Hellboy 2: The Golden Army, where he talks about, when these creatures of fairy tales, mythology, disappear, the world is worse for it. And you really kind of get that feeling that Swamp Thing is hooked into that, especially because he is one of these, sort of creatures of he's a modern day creature of myth and fairy tale. This isn't like the Incredible Hulk where he's running around doing superheroic things and he's on a team with the Avengers. This is a guy who sort of lives in the shadows and the filth, and does his deeds from that staging ground, and it's beautiful language. I really like the feel of it.
Yeah, and I think the art really goes hand in glove with it here. It's very shadowy,
right?
And I can see John Totlebin's inks are very strong in here, and I think they really add to the mood, and they play with the language metaphor that Moore is using of the shadows and light.
Right,
very
right.
strong. Again, they're still setting up, and we get to the next section, which is about we get the soldiers moving in.
I like the guy at the hotel who his language is written in such a way that you can hear this accent. I get this straight. A monster, is that what you're saying? From a UFO? UFO actually spelled YOU-FOE. UFO. I love that. And the soldier's like, "Don't worry, Pop. We got the situation under control. It's just, shut up, buddy." It's fantastic.
Yep, and it's definitely plays to the idea that they're appealing to using patriotism as a weapon, because I think that the local even volunteers to help out these soldiers.
Say, you hammer those searchlights, son. Yep.
But it also just kind of moves on to Matt and Abigail as they try to reconcile each other. And I do like Dande's artwork here, and the idea of putting a couple of booze bottles that are kind of leaking all over the page.
Right.
I think that's a very effective imagery, too, that goes with the story very well.
Very much so. Very much so. And again, this is another situation where, for me, I don't know these characters. I don't know their history. I don't know exactly how they fit into things. But I feel like everything is written in a way that I get enough of a basic sense of who they are. And they're also written in a way that I find them interesting and I want to learn more about them. So for Moore coming into this, not only starting his own stories, but also trying to wrap things up from previous storylines, I feel like he's doing a nice job of straddling that line between the previous and the new. And, again, I feel invested. I feel invested, which is good.
Yeah. I think it helps. I think they behave as adults.
Right.
And they want to reconcile, but there's still hurdles to them.
Right.
And I like the way that Alan Moore kind of leaves us alone with Matt at the end. And he reveals that he hasn't quite been totally truthful with Abby.
Yeah, that's totally bizarre. He's got a blue light lady who lives in his hand and appears to have a nice time with him while he drinks. And okay.
Yeah, there's a lot more to his story yet to come here. I think
Clearly.
That's clear.
Clearly.
But that's okay. I mean, he Moore is trying to juggle threads, so that comes up. And then we get right back to the soldiers there. Moore doesn't waste too much time with reminding us of the threat. And I mean, they talk about, they use the phrase "loose ends" in the dialogue here, and him tying it up, which I probably rolled my eyes at if it was in a movie titled "Loose Ends." But I'm willing to give him.
It's very meta. It's very meta, which as portions of Watchmen were, where Moore is basically telling you what he's doing as he's doing it. And I like the fact that, again, in the moments that we've spent with Swamp Thing so far in this story, we hear his existential crisis. We hear his thoughts expressed in this beautiful poetic language. We see him as a character. We see this monster as a person. And the soldiers, when they talk about him, "Oh, you reckon he's in there? This bog animal?" To him, to these guys, to the soldiers, he is just that. He is an animal. He's a monster. Let's get in. Let's kill it. We're done. Get out. That's it. Whereas, again, the audience already knows this creature as the person he is, and I like that. I like that contrast as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the central conceit of the series, that the Swamp Thing is always the most human character,
of course,
of the series, and I think it always works. I mean, he appeals to the outsider in all of us.
Absolutely.
Moving along, there's been a lot of we're over halfway through the issue here, so it's start for times or things to start happening, and they happen fairly quickly here. We have Dennis and Liz returning to the motel, getting a key or asking for the key to the room to get some of their belongings, and the clerk here has to go on about this movie she's seen the other night, starring Donald Sutherland, which is really a very thinly veiled reference to Don't Look Now, which she describes inaccurately, but still kind of on point with the larger sweep of the film. I don't know. And oddly enough,
I loved the coincidence of this, because I had picked that up on one of the Criterion Collection 50% off sales, where I tend to buy when those sales happen. I just grab a bunch of stuff that I think looks interesting, and then I'm very slow to watch it. I'd watched that film not long before I read this issue, so it was interesting for me. It was like, wow, that's a great coincidence. I just watched that. Otherwise, I would have no idea what she was talking about. But it was a nice bit of luck.
Yeah, but I think it is a good use of that, with the sudden ending of the film, kind of segueing right into the explosive attack on Liz and Dennis. I mean, fortunately for Liz and Dennis, a guy volunteers to help him out. I think
Old Dallas Brandon. Kind of a weird character.
Yeah, he appeared previously kind of hitting on Liz, so I think it's kind of a extension of that. He's going to demonstrate how chivalrous he is.
I don't think Alan Moore liked this character, given how quickly he dispatches of him.
No, I don't think so either. But I think I think it works for fun, and the background after that, where Liz and Dennis kind of escape and run off to go into hiding, with Dennis being very paranoid and possessive, and it's kind of like he kind of loves what's going on there, because he gets to be the protective man to Liz, and I think it's kind of creepy.
Yeah, I don't like Dennis at all.
No, I think there's no reason to, but I think it's a thread that's definitely going to be picked up later. I kind of think there's some humor in there too, where they ask how much explosive they used on here, because apparently they can't tell how many bodies are in there. So yeah.
You have these two strange men lurking about, these obvious G-men types who are lurking about in trench coats, and one of them has a hat, and they're both carrying revolvers. And it's great because, again, at every page there's just something. I feel like there's something weird or paranoid on every page, and I love that because it sets the tone and the mood so well.
Yeah, and you have eagles in the corner, kind of
yes,
symbolizing government power, G-men or abuse. So
very majestic eagles.
Yeah,
at that.
So I don't think more called for them, but I think they're a welcome addition to it. I
Absolutely,
think they add commentary to it.
Absolutely.
And those eagles kind of lead us into the soldiers getting ready to attack the Swamp Thing in the dark woods as he tries to avoid them, but it seems to be setting up a final confrontation here with the soldiers, with the flamethrowers and the numbers of them. I think it's a really interesting lead up there, precursor. They have the spotlights on and the shadows.
Yeah, these guys are just itching. These guys are just itching to burn everything down. Let's get some. No problems with the flamethrowers. Anybody? Let's get some. It's just like, okay, these guys are ready.
Yep. Yes, they are. But before we get to that, we have to get back to Matt and Abby. I guess Matt goes out to visit Abby in the woods because she went to get some air because she just couldn't deal with the emotional strain and a sudden reconciliation. And Matt goes out to find her under the glares of, or under the sound of the choppers, which I think is a nice sound effect sprayed across the page there, kind of let us know before the helicopters show up and blow up their house.
Right.
Which is a good way for Matt and Abby to escape but be presumed dead. Although I kind of wonder that if explosives are something of a comic book movie thing where just showing up and shooting them in the head would be much more effective. Yeah.
But again, though, one of the reasons that I think that this actually works is you just get the feeling that the military here is, these guys are just so pent up. They just want to blow stuff up. They just want to burn things down. And I love Swamp Thing's reaction to it when the soldiers begin flamethrowing the wilderness and the swamp. Here he's just had this final confrontation with his old enemy. He's clearly having this crisis of self, the crisis of being. And he's like, well, now what? Now what are these lights? And of course it's flamethrowers and helicopters and it's like out of the frying pan and into the deep fat fryer. But yeah. So I get it. It is totally. It's totally overkill, but it just feels like it fits with just that, the excess of what these guys are ready to win.
Subtle.
They're not. They are not at all.
No, they are very much a blunt instrument. With large numbers, I think when we get into the attack on Swamp Thing, I think there's a nice series of thoughts written by Alan Moore about the ants swarming a beetle. The beetle is bigger and stronger and probably smarter than the ants, but there's just too many of them.
It's too many ants. Yep.
And I think that they basically draw that comparison there, and the attack proceeds from there. And I have to say that they're throwing everything at Swamp Thing here. The helicopters, flamethrowers, men all over the place. I don't know if the Swamp Thing pulling down a helicopter for the big explosive crash is maybe not the best interpretation of how it could be, because it doesn't look like anybody survives that crash. Right.
And you got to wonder how he survives too. I mean, he's a walking plant who seems to be caught in the middle of a massive explosion. So
yeah,
not sure how that works, but
yeah. And again, I think the art is very good here, using kind of eagles as silhouettes.
Yes.
At the end of the page. I think this is a very nicely laid out comic here.
It really is.
I think it's all leading up to a very exciting conclusion here.
Well, the bookends too are interesting because the the first eagle image, the eagle is black. You've got the helicopter shining a spotlight on Swamp Thing who's running. But then after he's pulled the helicopter down and blown it up and escaped more soldiers with flamethrowers, the next eagle is this sort of blazing yellow with Swamp Thing in the middle of it that, nature again has triumphed over the technology and cruelty of man. It's just really beautiful and symbolic stuff.
Yeah. Well, that and he is kind of caught in fire too.
Right.
It is really
literally incredible.
Interesting. Yeah. Which I think leads us to our last reading, which will talk about Swamp Thing making a run for safety. So we'll take it away, John, on this.
There's fire behind me. There's light all around me. I'm heading south, but there are too many ants. And there aren't enough shadows. And no matter how many of them I take out, no matter how hard I run, they just keep coming. I think they're going to get me this time. I think they finally ran out of room for monsters. And it looks like I just ran out of room too. There's a belt of blind whiteness around the wood. And beyond that, there's shadows. I wonder what's in the shadows. It doesn't matter. I can't stay here. If I can just make it through the girdle of light, I'll be okay. I can do it. This body's near enough invulnerable. They won't be able to stop me. I better run. Run for the shadows. But the shadows are so very far away.
So we're back again. I like how this issue wraps up. I think it's very exciting, from the circle of light around the woods to Swamp Thing wondering what's in the shadows, but knowing the shadows are probably his best chance at safety. They bring back Newton's cradle one last time with its regular momentum until it's all disrupted, and Swamp Thing is shot multiple times in the body, but most importantly, he's shot right through the head.
Right.
Stumbles and collapses, and he is apparently dead. His body is in the hands of the Sutherland Corporation, and we have to wait to see what happens next.
And it's interesting for me because, clearly, we're beginning Alan Moore begins the first issue of his run with his hero, apparently dead. My question for you, Robert, again, not knowing how the anatomy or biology of Swamp Thing, how those things work, do bullets harm him? Does he have organs under there? If you have rules, for example, in something like The Walking Dead, where or any zombie film, you shoot it in the head, it's dead.
Right.
Does that work the same for Swamp Thing? Is he mostly made of plant? For me, I was just like, well, he's obviously shot a lot here, and he's clearly hurt by it. He's clearly dismayed by it. But I also just saw him engulfed in flames from a helicopter crash that he caused. So, what effect do the bullets actually have on him?
Well,
is that something that's been addressed in previous issues leading up to this?
Well, in general, his history is that he could take a bullet and he will heal it from it, but nobody's ever shot him in the brain before. And they certainly blow out his brain, so he collapses because without a brain, what can you do?
Right, and the artwork in this, especially in those top three panels, really does sell that this is a new thing for the reader and for the character. It's like, whoa, he knows he's been shot in the head, and he sort of falters and then falls, and you're just surrounded on all sides by these soldiers, and then it just looks like he's on a slab at the end, and that's it. So this is a great hook.
Yeah, it gets you. It gets you go. How did our hero get out of this? Are we even going to get out of it at all? This could very easily have been the end of the series.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, shooting a guy in the head is an appropriate way to finish something off with finality. It doesn't get much more final than that.
And I kind of feel like, in a way, Alan Moore might be saying, this is the end of the series. This is the end of everyone else's series. This is the end. I'm going to start fresh, and I'm going to do my own thing. And again, as the title states, as the soldiers themselves explicitly stated, we're tying up the loose ends, including the title character himself. This is it. This is the end of everything you've known. I have enough of, as you said, you have your side characters are still sort of in the wind to come back in the future as they're needed. But this is the end of this, and I've wrapped everything up, and now we're going to go on a new ride. Right. And I think it's very effective that way.
Mm-hmm. I also think it's very, very effectively structured. It brings it full circle because we have Swamp Thing looking for the body of his enemy at the beginning of the issue, and by the end of the issue, he's shot in the head with his body in the hands of his enemies. Right,
and it's interesting that he says at the beginning, "Well, is the enemy really dead if you can't find the body?" Well, it ends literally with his body.
Yes.
This isn't, well, maybe he got away. Maybe they burned it. This isn't like it ends with a shot of the wilderness burning down and the soldier standing at the outskirts of the flames saying, well, we probably got him. But the reader is thinking, well, he said earlier, well, we didn't see the body. Clearly, no, it ends literally. The final panel is the body with a clipboard with someone writing the anatomy lesson on it. I mean, it's pretty final. It's pretty final.
It is very final. So, overall, I mean, this is your first Alan Moore Swamp Thing issue. And I have to say that I alluded to at the beginning, this is one of the issues I did not read initially. Mm-hmm. Newsstand distribution wasn't always the best, and it was the middle of winter, and I didn't have a driver's license yet, so I guess I did not make the trek out to the local drugstore to purchase the issue there, and missed it somehow.
Well, reading it now, Robert, after you've read, what are your impressions of this issue, having read what came after it, having missed this one, now that you've gone back and slipped this piece back into the puzzle? What are your impressions of it? Tell me where you're coming from.
I think it's a good start. I think he actually accomplishes a lot in there. Like you said, he does wrap up the loose ends. It's not the best thing that Moore will write during the series. I think it's kind of a half Pascal, half Moore transition here, because there's Pascal and Moore wrote in a very different way. Pascal is very much a television guy with lots of threads going on, and Moore will have lots of threads going on, but he'll be a lot more succinct about it and tie them together better. And I think it's a little crowded at times. There's a lot to accomplish in this issue, but I think he accomplishes what he sets out to do. Maybe it's more action than language and ideas that'll show up later, but I think it's very well told. It's his Moore's debut in American comics. I think it's his first 22-page story he ever wrote, and I think he handled it very well. He covered everything that needed to be covered and brought it in for a conclusion, which is with a good hook for the next issue. So, a very good issue, I think.
Very much so. Again, this being my introduction to this world, I really felt drawn in from the beginning, because again, you get the sense that, okay, this Alec Holland, the Swamp Thing, has existed. You can see from the ending of his battle with Arcane, he has existed for quite some time in this world of weirdness and monsters and space people and whatever. And I like that. I like the sort of the timeless government conspiracy stuff, which is very, very ominous and seemingly omniscient. And it's just a great. It plays on a lot of the things that I enjoy and have enjoyed in other other science fiction and horror stories. This is absolutely in my wheelhouse. The things that I didn't understand, which were pretty much limited to the relationships between some of the side characters, are all things that I'm looking forward to seeing. Well, I'd love to see these characters come back so I could learn more about them. I'd like to go back and read some of the previous material to understand a little bit more about that context. So the fact that it has me that invested to see, okay, what comes next, and I'm also interested in what happened before, it's very, very, I think it's very effective. It was very effective for me in that regard. I really loved this issue. Loved the language of it. I loved the momentum of it. Newton's Cradle as a narrative device was really effective, and I like that it sort of runs. That's a thread that runs through the issue, and I agree with you, Robert, that this is very action heavy, which surprised me a little bit because again I came into this expecting more of a horror thing. It's a little bit Michael Bay at times, but I think, but again though, I think that works. We're just gonna blow up everything that came before and start fresh with a clean slate. That clean slate being our main character is dead, which again is a great hook. It all just dovetails together into my being very excited for what comes next.
Yeah, and what comes next, I think it can be very interesting. I'm just going to say that I think the next issue is one of the most important issues that DC ever published.
Wow.
But we'll see how that story continues from here, with our next issue focusing on the anatomy lesson. In the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter at SwampThingsPod. Also feel free to send us an email at swampthingspod@gmail.com. And if you like what you hear, please leave us a review on iTunes. Thanks for listening. We'll be back soon.
Much